Peace, peace. This your host, Selah-Shalom. And this is the Cosmon Teachings in the words of Jehovah and his angel ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible OAHSPE. And the topic of discussion today is called the Egyptian and Sumerian gods, the root of the problem. Now, I've been watching some of these debates with the Hebrew Israelites and the Egyptologists going back and forth. And what I notice is that the Egyptologists, they beat up on the Muslims and the Christians concerning the concept of God. Once we start doing the research and breaking and deciphering the codes of the Bible of who these gods were, it's going to root us back into Egypt and Sumeria. So with that being said, that's the root of the problem. So even if we start to eradicate the falsities of the scriptures and we come to the root, we're dealing with Egypt and Sumer. So if Christianity, Judaism, and Islam is bullshit, that means the root of the bullshit comes out of Sumer and Egypt. Now here's a rundown of the Sumerian and Egyptian gods. Just a couple of them, because you know it's like a million of them. And I ain't got time to be going through all those gods, but I'm just giving you the preliminaries, the forefather gods, who started it, and then everybody else kind of broke off from them, becoming the sub-gods and things of that nature. But now here are the primordial gods of Sumer. You have Apsu, representing fresh water. Then you have Tiamat, representing chaos, and that's seawater. And then you have Lamu, and then you have Lahamu, and then you have Anshar, which represents the sky god. And then you have Kishar, which represents the earth, the female goddess of the earth. And then you have Anu, another sky god. And then you have Kai, another earth goddess. And then you have Enlil, god of the air. And then you have Enki, god of the earth. And then you have Ninkarsag, who was the lady of heaven, the great queen, which Ashtaroth is rooted in. So these are the primordial gods of Sumer, which in return became some of your biblical gods, such as Enlil became El. Enki is known as Satan in the text. He is the one who brought the flood of waters. Anu would be represented as the chief god, the El of the Anunnakis. Now let's move to Egypt. These are the 9 Iads of the Egyptian gods. Atum representing the sun. Shu representing air. And then you have Tefnu representing moisture. Geb represents the earth. Nu represents the sky. And then you have Osiris representing the Orion. And then you have Isis representing Sirius. And then you have Set representing sunset. And then you got Heru representing the falcon. So these are the early Egyptian gods, where you could find reference to some of these gods in the scriptures as well. Now between these two sets of gods coming out of Sumer and Egypt, you have similarities. Atum, being the sun, can be compared to Shemesh. Shu, being symbolic to air, or the god of air, the deity deified as air, can be compared to Enlil, the air deity, or lord of the air. And next you have Nu, who can be compared to Anu, the sky deity. So you can find some similarities between the two deities coming out of Egypt and Sumer. But these are the roots of the problem of today concerning your scriptures in the Bible. Because these stories coming out of ancient Sumer and ancient Egypt became some of the stories that was plagiarized in the Bible. Such as the stories of creation, the 7-day creation. You can find those in Sumer. So this is the root of the problem of modern religion. These ancient doctrines from 6,000 years ago that still lingers today. So once you start to decipher these things and break the codes, you have to free yourself from these false gods and break free from becoming a subservient slave after you cross over. What a lot of people are doing that I see now is that they're breaking away from the religion and going back to the ancient gods. So now that people are realizing that Jesus is an invented character and it's rooted in Serapis, and Serapis is rooted in Osiris, you have them trying to go back and represent Osiris as the modern day deity, trying to defy Osiris today. So the best thing to do after you understand that these stories has been plagiarized from ancient texts is to break away from the texts and the stories and let it go and become free, being not bound, so you won't be a subservient slave to these false gods. Now, according to OAHSPE, these things took place during the 23rd arc cycle after the creation of man, during 3953 BC to 1553 BC, which is the length of the 23rd arc cycle. That's the time period these fallen angels created these false accounts to imprison the minds of mortals then, to populate their heavenly kingdoms for that era. And these doctrines still linger today. And you have new angels who took the place of these false deities of old and assumed the godship of the false deities of old, and they're doing the same thing today. So by you accepting these belief systems, or re-accepting these belief systems of old, you are rebounding yourself back to those customs, which is going to make you a subservient slave to these gods of old today. So you want to break free from that. So the OAHSPE clears up these things as well. Because in the OAHSPE, in the 23rd arc cycle after the creation of man, there was a fallen angel by the name of Anu, Hasaj, style Lord God in Dias. And he had a plan to overthrow Jehovah's kingdom, or true God in his heavenly kingdom. So he succeeded in doing that on his own account. And in the process of doing that, he created his own false story of creation. And he had Osiris, who was a fallen angel as well, write the account. And Osiris had dominion over the land of Africa, Northeast Africa, as far as Mesopotamia. Ashar of Mesopotamia is the same Asar of Egypt, because Osiris had dominance in that region. So you had the Mesopotamian culture and you had the Egyptian culture, and Osiris was in command of both of those religions. That's why some of the deities are compared to each other, as I described earlier. Because through the oracles, they wrote the account according to the language of where they were at. So the Egyptians, they wrote the account according to the glyph language, or the hieroglyphic language, through the signs and symbols. And in Mesopotamia, they wrote it through the cuneiform. So Osiris was behind that whole thing, through Anu-Hasaj's falsely styled Lord God in Dias. And in the Book of Wars Against Jehovah, chapter 29, verse 44, it states how Osiris prepared the books, which would be known as the creation stories of Egypt and Sumer, verse 44. After this, Osiris prepared a book of generations of men on earth, and these were the substance of the doctrines of Dias and his gods. And Osiris and Tian and Sudga departed, and came down to the earth, to their mortal wards, and by virtue of their presence inspired they their wards to write them in mortal words, according to the language in the places where they lived. And they were so written by these seers, and copies of them were made and put on file in the libraries of the records of the kings and queens of the earth in Arabia, Japheth being Asia and China, and Shem being India as far as Iraq or Mesopotamia, and these became the Bible of that day. So this is what took place during the 23rd arc cycle after the creation of man through his fallen angel by Anu-Hasaj and through his servant angel Osiris. They did these things. The same way Lu among the false Christ and Gabriel the false Allah did they things to establish Christianity and Islam. Osiris did the same thing 6,000 years ago. So I'm showing you the root of the problem is coming out of ancient Egypt and ancient Sumer, dealing with the stories of creation and dealing with the customs of the gods of that day that had inspiration of immortals to carry out the law, statutes, and commandments of those gods of that day. So OAHSPE is breaking down the origin of where these problems of modern day religion stem from, and it's showing you a way out, which is to break free and come back to the Great Spirit, the Creator. And to be free from the creators, to be free from the false dogma and the false religions. Because according to the Creator, those who serve the Creator serve others and continue to educate themselves in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. But the false gods will have you worship a deity and keep you ignorant and not question and not obtain knowledge and education. That's why the Bible is not a book of education. It leaves you with more questions than answers. It leaves you not questioning the book. How many times have you heard a friend, your parent, whoever say, "Oh, you can't question God. That's not to be questioned." See, those are the techniques and the methods of the false god to keep you in ignorance. But the Creator don't move in ignorance. He reveals all to let you know all things on a corporeal level. So with that, I'd like to say peace and blessings and catch you on the next documentary. Peace.